Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. We had a monitoring visit today. It was actually a remote monitoring visit for a really important study, and actually like a really cool study we have. I wish I could tell you more about it. I can't, but it was a really good experience for my staff because, as you guys know, right now we have a lot of newer staff, like lesser experienced people at UMA Clinical Trials. The team lead is almost 2 years in, but everyone else is like 6 months or less of experience, which is 3 other people. And we had a really good interim monitoring visit. All in all, they didn't have too many findings. They did have some minor deviations out of window, stuff like that. There was also a case where we did a urine pregnancy test, thank God, but we forgot to check the box on the lab requisition form for the serum pregnancy because they leave that up to the coordinator to check yes or no, and if it's a female, you're supposed to, if it's a female of childbearing potential, you're supposed to check it, as with most studies. Luckily, this study also had an in-house urine pregnancy screen, so that was a deviation. It's not a major one. It doesn't impact patient safety because we are still doing a urine pregnancy test, but they want to double check it with the serum. In my opinion, that's not an IRB reportable deviation, but it's still a deviation. We had a few other minor issues like subjects scribbling their name. So sometimes subjects, especially like elderly or if they have like movement disorders, it's kind of hard to write for them, and it's really challenging for them to cross out an initial and date. And we give our patients the option of paper or electronic consent. And with electronic consent, these things don't happen. Like, that's one of the benefits of using electronic consent is legibility issues are non-existent. But not everyone's comfortable using a mobile device or even a laptop or a tablet. So we do have the paper option, and not surprisingly, a lot of our errors, or I guess findings, specifically when it comes to legibility and patient handwriting, are on the paper consent form. So we had one case like that. We had another interesting case where we're in a border town and there's a lot of bilingual people that speak Spanish and English equally fluent, equally comfortable. So we had one patient who signed one consent form for one of there's 2 consent forms in this study. So one of the consent forms, the main consent form, was signed in English, and then the other one, which was a consent form about how they receive payment, was in Spanish. The subject didn't care. The coordinators, they were bilingual, the ones who distributed the consent, so it was not like a finding. That's not like a major finding at all. That's not even a minor finding, and that just requires documentation. Like, it does look a little bit strange to an auditor, hey, why are you using English consent and then Spanish? And that's actually happened in other studies with us where we've used Spanish consent forms but then English patient-reported outcomes, or vice versa, where there's bilingual people. You actually can use whatever the patient requests. So if the patient's bilingual and says, hey, I can do the consent form in English, and then an hour later into the visit, you pull up the patient-reported outcomes, and the patient says, you know what, I'm actually more comfortable in Spanish. You do it in Spanish. And it's not a deviation at all, but it does seem strange just to an auditor looking. And so you got to clarify these things with note to files, memo to file. So a lot of the follow-up monitoring discussion with the team was really helpful, and a lot of it was, hey, write a memo to file for this, write a note to file for that particular activity. I think it was eye-opening for the staff because they haven't really had too many monitoring visits. This was not their first monitoring visit at all, but it was one of this is like a super important study of ours, and this monitor is extremely thorough. So it was like I love monitoring visits when they're like this, by these kind of monitors, because they are like free trainings for your site. And it was really good. Even the PI was involved, and I think all in all it was good. But these are some common findings we have. Some other issues were with timings. So when you're using eSource, and it's funny because we just had this conversation at Save Our Sites conference, SOS conference, for those that missed out. There's always next year. There was a paper versus eSource debate, and eSource kind of forces you to work on your processes better, because a couple of the instances was when we're starting a vital signs. Typically, patient has to be seated, and then you, like, for 5 minutes, and then you start the vitals. So we had a few cases where we put time seated. We had to like backdate the time because the patient's actually been sitting more than 5 minutes. They've been in that chair maybe for an hour, because it's the same chair they do the informed consent in. So again, memos to file would help any of these kind of discrepancies. These are like some technicalities and technical issues when it comes to using eSource versus paper. So again, nothing major. All in all, we had a really good monitoring visit, and the first of many more to come. Enrollment is enrollment for us was really good. We're not one of the top enrollers, but we're also not near the bottom. I would say we're above average recruitment, which is not bad for a site like ours that has relatively new staff. And we've been getting a lot of diverse patients. So we've been, the sponsors really happy with us. We've recently made efforts and outreaches. You've seen some of the videos, and I'll upload a few more shorts. Attempts to get Native American community involved, and that's a very tough community to try to reach out to, but it's extremely valuable for the sponsors to have those demographics being represented, as well as the Latino. So all in all, the sponsors are pretty happy with us, but this was like some of the key takeaways from this monitoring visit. There was another detail with delegation of authorities log. So in this particular study, the DOA log, the PI is not on it. The PI just lists people that are on it. And I've had other studies where the PIs are on the delegation of authorities log. So those are some differences between studies. It really depends on what the sponsor prefers. The FDA doesn't really mandate anything other than that there is a DOA log. But outside of that, they don't really mandate the specifics of, does the PI actually need to be on a line, or does the PI not need to be on the line? For this particular sponsor, the PI does not need to be on the DOA log, but they do need to initial and date everyone and then sign the log itself. So a lot of interesting tidbits here and there during this monitoring visit. All in all, I think we did well. We're signing, PI oversight was brought up, and we are doing a good job of PI oversight. We could tighten up our inclusion-exclusion criteria a little bit better, and as far as who reviews it. So what's the process of reviewing the inclusion-exclusion criteria, specifically at screening and randomization? And specifically at randomization, you really want the PI or sub-investigator or someone who's appropriately trained and delegated to make sure that the patient actually qualifies, because I think one of the worst things you can do in research, besides harming patients, and maybe this is indirectly harming patients, is randomizing patients that shouldn't be randomized, that don't qualify. And luckily we didn't have any of that, but we're not documenting like who's actually reviewing it. We're all kind of doing it as a team, and they want specifically the PI or sub-I to look it over. Another thing that was brought up was the SUSARs. For this particular study, those are suspected unexpected serious adverse reactions. The PI has been signing them. The PI has a delegate, which we need to write a note to file, that the delegate of the PI, which is the coordinator, will print the SUSARs off for the PI so that the PI can sign them. technically you need a delegate for this, so that's the coordinator, and you can put all the coordinators to do that, because all the coordinators are in charge of all the tasks. So that was another like small finding we have to do, is like document who's the delegate for the SUSARs. And interestingly enough, this sponsor wanted the sub-I to also sign the SUSARs. So I think that's actually a good thing. SUSARs are not that common in the studies I've been doing. Like, they have to make it to be a SUSAR, it has to be suspected and unexpected serious adverse reactions. So by the time it gets to a phase 3 trial, you don't have too many unexpected ones. So you're not supposed to get all these SUSARs anyway. So when one happens, I've been doing it, having everyone kind of look at it, including the coordinators, including the PIs, including the sub-Is, and we've just been having the PI sign it. But I think it'll be good practice to have the PI and sub-I sign it, and you can have everyone sign it too, for that matter. And again, we use Creo, so you can have everyone sign off on it within Creo without having to use wet ink. So those are some of the things off the top of my head. Again, I was really pleased with the outcome. I'm really proud of my staff. They did a really good job on this study, and I think we just continue from here. We use these to get better, to improve, and I wanted to share a little bit with you, Guru Nation, so you could follow the journey of my site, but also maybe this helps one of you guys out there as well. Like, subscribe, comment, share. It's raining like crazy here in Yuma, and the traffic is at a standstill on the freeway, which never happens. Stay safe out there, guys. And these monitoring visits, take them seriously and use them as educational opportunities for your staff. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye-bye.